what peats are allowed and not allowed in organic production?
That says Omri.
Oh, it says Omri. That solves that.
Organic material.
Look at that. Good old Wade. I didn't have to. Thank you.
In your notes, it says peat moss or COIR.
That is coconut fiber.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Now I have an interesting story to tell about that. I took a soils class with Chip Hope at Blue Ridge Community College a long time ago. I figured I'd get some more official training. And we took a tour of the Scott fertilizer plant and potting soil plant that was off the mountain, someplace down there, right before South Carolina, or just in South Carolina. And the man who gave us the tour was a very frank person, and he told us a bunch of things. So probably the most important thing for you to know is if you're ever tempted to buy the bargain basement potting soil, just don't. Friends don't let friends get potting soil bargains. I had discovered that the painful way. I once bought some bargain potting soil, and I had gotten a quite expensive little flat of tiny little, oh, I'm forgetting the name now. It's the wonderful little flower that comes up and has a nodding head. And there's lots of them. It's
Columbine or something?
No, not columbine. It's a house plant.
Cyclamen.
Cyclamen, yes, thank you, cyclamen. Senior moment. And I bought they're going to be Christmas presents, right? I bought really expensive little seedlings of really fancy hybrids. I put them all in that cheap potting soil and killed every one in a day. Bam, gone. And I know how to grow things. I didn't overwater or something. You know, I've taken care of many a baby seedling.
88 cents a bag.
Yes. Yeah.
I've killed a lot of cyclamens, though they're fussy.
Yeah, yeah. But they really can't take cheap potting soil. You know, if you want to test your potting soil, try growing cyclamen. You know. Okay. What he said at that workshop was that the bargain basement stuff they make for Walmart and Rose's and all those other discount stores, they throw whatever garbage they get in. It's just whatever crap there is, because that's all they can afford to put in it. He said it's absolute crap. They put nothing but garbage in that stuff, you know. And you can tell when you look at it. That's what's in there, you know. You can tell how it performs, you know. I can't think of a reason to buy it, you know. I can't think of a use for it, you know. Unless it was to fill some pot, you know, for a temporary planting for some kind of display purpose, that it wouldn't matter if they died 2 days later, you know. So stay away from it.
That's sad, though.
It is sad, yeah, yeah. I mean, and the truth is, if you bought it and have to use it, add good compost and give it some time, and it might fix it, you know. Life fixes everything, eventually. You know, life is about coming into vibrance, you know. But sometimes it has to go through a pathogenic stage to get there. So, pathogens actually are about fixing things too, you know. Some people might think that swine flu is about fixing our impact on the planet, you know. Anyways, the other thing he told us about was core, because they used it. And he said, you know, the production process is pretty fascinating. Basically, it's these mounds of coconut shells that these incredibly poor people stand in front of tires that are spinning on differentials, right, of vehicles, and the tires are studded with nails, and they hold them there, and they pull the things off, and they have all kinds of horrible wounds from doing it, you know. And their kids, who are like, you should be in school, are hauling huge bales of them, of this stuff, up onto the ship while they're doing that, you know. That's sustainable. It's coming from across the ocean. I don't know how sustainable that is, you know. I mean, you can get it from the Caribbean, but there are significant salt issues in the Caribbean core. Basically, if you want the quality core, it's coming from Southeast Asia. So you've just had all that impact on the people. On the other hand, they need those jobs. I don't know. It's just something, you know.
Of course, that peat moss comes from Canada.
And it's not, I mean, they could tell you over and over again that it's going to be there forever, but it ain't, you know. We're mining it.
It's a mining,
yeah, we're mining it, you know. So, I mean, really, you can do it. This is the answer, okay? I'm not doing it. We should do it. Now they're an educational farm, we have to do it, right? Make a big, huge pile of leaves. Let them sit there forever, right? Until when you get to the bottom of it and you lift it up, it is black and fine and spongy, and you can use that in replacement for the peat or the core if you then use the right amount of compost. And it might be a little bit more. You'll have to experiment with it. It might not be the 2/5 that we're using now. You know, it might be more like, you know, half. But you can do that, and it'll work. So if you want to be righteous, that's the answer.
How about old rotted wood chips?
It's going to tie up too much nitrogen.
Even old rotted ones? Bottom of the pile is for 5 years?
5 years, I mean, well, you know, it really depends on who you talk to. When I talked to the Lupkes, I was getting trained by them, and they said sawdust can take up to 20 years to break down completely. And the reason is that the function of how it gets broken down, nature's not in any hurry to break it down, right? Wood is broken down by fungi. What fungi do is they wrap around it and they coat it in hyphae, you know, the plant part of fungi, and they're in no hurry. They just sit there. It's like this is their meal ticket, you know. They mediate. They only let as much moisture in as they want, and they use the nitrogen to eat it, you know. And they're in no hurry to break it down.
Okay, so here you take wood chips, mix with compost, and actively work on it for several years.
Yeah, you can probably break that down to where you could use it, you know. And I have to admit that the Lupkes taught me that. I have one pile of, you know, French Broad wood chips, you know, French Broad Electric Company, wood chips and leaf and everything that's all ground up. I got it at the height of summer when there was tons of green and it was lots of young growth. And that pile broke down in 4 years into fine, wonderful stuff. I bet that'd be good. It's all about what the ingredients were of the wood. Any wood that's less than a year old will break down pretty quick, right? So if you get young, new growth, you could probably break that down. That'd be the ideal way to do it. And I had the right microbes there, the right fungi, you know. I really should get the fungi out of there and send them down to Trad at Mushroom Mountain and have him develop it as an inoculant for farmers to put into their compost piles.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, with all the other things I should do, I should get that done tomorrow. You know? Okay, enough talk. Time for action. At least it's cooler out here, right? Okay. Now, something to know about this. This stuff, why they put surfactants in it, which this probably doesn't have, though it might have an organically approved surfactant, is because peat is very slow to take up water. Best practice would be for us to put this in the wheelbarrow, our two buckets of it, add water, and talk for another 20 minutes before we put the stuff in. We can get away without doing that because compost holds so much water. It'll remediate the slow absorption of this. At first, when we make our mix, it won't be very well mixed. There'll be this wet compost and this dry peat. And you'll see the difference. You'll see these dry red things mixed in with the dark wet compost. Over the course of 15 minutes, an hour or whatever, it'll totally even out. You know. So we're not going to do that for the sake of time. You know. And the recipe, if you looked at it and saw it, it's basically 2 parts peat or core, or leaf mold, or ideal rotted wood waste, right? 1 part compost, 2 parts vermiculite, or perlite, or 1 of each, right? It's your call. Because we don't have the vermiculite here, we're doing 2 parts perlite. If I had vermiculite, I'd do a mix of each. I think that's best practice always. My rule of thumb in life is when in doubt, go with diversity. That applies to everything. You know? All aspects of human life, all aspects of culture. You know? Diversity is the most dynamic and most stable situation. I'm sure there are recent places where that doesn't apply, but I'm not focused on that.
So there's 5 parts altogether?
5 parts altogether, yeah. Yep. 5 part makes the whole. You want 20% compost, so that's how you develop it. You know? Okay. We're not using worm castings in this. You could. You don't really need it if you're using our quality compost. If you have compost that you think is, yeah, thanks. If you have, oh, and Rocco, can you get a watering can fill a watering can so we can water down the perlite? And not give an example of why you shouldn't do that. If your compost is questionable in its nitrogen, you might want to use worm castings. You might want to use worm castings anyways, because worm castings have auxins and other growth promoting factors that actually greatly enhance germination. It's important though to be very careful with how much worm castings you use. You don't want to use more than 20%, over 20%, and those same hormones and whatnot that promote germination will inhibit it. So you want to be careful.
You can talk.
Okay. You want to be, yeah, you notice that I don't do talking and work very well together. You know? I talk better than anything else, actually. But a small amount of it can really enhance production, you know. The one thing we're going to add to this, I'm going to talk about amendments to this. The only one we're going to use, because we're using McEnroe, our McEnroe quality, our own high quality potting soil, compost. The only thing we're going to add is this charcoal product called Char Grow. Char Grow has the kind of vital life that's similar to worm castings. I see them as comparable, at least. I think Char Grow might be better. From experimenting, I think it's better.
Is it a biochar?
Yeah, it's a biochar. And indeed, once again, full disclosure, I have a future possible financial interest in Char Grow. Right now, I just give John way more time than I have, advice and help to make it happen because I believe in the product. Someday he may hit it rich, in which case he will compensate me, I'm sure, because he's a friend and we're good friends, you know. But I'm into it because I think it's great stuff. And I'll be happy to tell you more about it at lunchtime. It doesn't fit in here, except to say, well, actually it does. We're going to add it. It fits in completely, you know, so I do a commercial for John. He actually is, for 4 or 5 years now, has been testing Char Grow with Virginia State. At Virginia State with Ron Morris, who's a professor emeritus there. And they've been testing Mountain Fresh and Mountain Fresh Plus tomatoes. And they've been putting the equivalent of 7 pounds per acre of Char Grow into their potting mix, right? For an acre's worth of tomatoes, which is 4 cups to the 5-gallon bucket, basically. They've actually switched though to 2 cups at the germination phase, and then 2 cups later when they step them up, because it's so rich that it can inhibit germination like the worm castings if they use the 4 cups. At that rate, the year before last, the results aren't in from this test, but the year before last, Ron Morris said, those results are so good I'm not talking about them. I will not talk about them because people will think that I'm full of it, you know. So he's not, you know, he's kind of hiding. They're in the report, but he's not paying attention to them because they had an 80% increase in yield on the first picking. You know? Yes.
You get the measurement right. After you get finished making this stuff, you put 2 cups of the Char Grow in 1 5-gallon bucket
Yes.
to use for growing, germination and stuff.
Yeah.
And then when you go to transplant them,
2 more cups.
2 more cups
in your
and a little
mix.
handful in the hole.
Well, no, you wouldn't put 2 cups in a hole. You put 2 cups in a mix. You would put a little bit.
And then of that, you put a handful of
Right.
milk.
Or if you stepped it up, you put them in the step up. You know, if you took them from 1/28 to 4 packs, you put it in the potting soil.
Yeah, okay.
That's what they do. They step them up. They start them in small. You know, in. We'll talk about cell sizes in a minute. You know, that should have been on the outline. Cell sizes is not on the outline. That's failure on my part. I didn't get it in the outline there. Okay, we just need a half of that.
We just need a half of that?
No, I'm sorry. Never take it back. No, I'm thinking McEnroe. You're right.
2 buckets.
This is not wet enough though. There's too much stuff flying around.
Okay.
It's not making us cough, but it will. Did you see the white stuff flying around? You want to avoid that. You wet it down really well, you know? Yeah, that's good. And go ahead and wet the bucket down too, because when we mix it in, we'll be feeling it too. Anyway, that's not to say that it's 80% increase in yield. It's 80% increase in yield on the first picking, which is huge for tomato growers, because the first picking is the one that makes money. It evens out to more like 12 or 15, 20%, but that's still, to quote Ron Morris, is enough to pay for the tractor. You know, it makes a big difference for farmers, and a big difference. I've had reports from people who had seed germination problems that improved their seed germination. We don't have seed germination problems, so we didn't see the big difference. And indeed, with McEnroe, you see a small difference because it is such good potting soil. You can only make it so much better. You know, but for this, see, we still don't have it wet enough. We want to get it wet enough that we don't see that dust flying around.
Sorry, everybody.
Oh, it's okay. We're learning. You're getting to see, you know. There we go. See, you're right in line. You're in the wrong place, you know. Hopefully, by the time you get cancer, we'll all be dead. I wish you a 150-year lifespan. Hopefully, it's not carcinogenic.
So we're looking for 1 bucket of compost then?
Yep, 1 bucket of compost. It's currently listed as a nuisance dust, you know, but it's a nuisance you don't want. And then thorough mixing, and that's a great potting soil.
Okay, we've done 2 peat mosses, 1 perlite, or was that 2?
Two perlites.
2 perlites and 1 compost.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. It's written down. You have it on your handout.
Thank you.
You know, and it's in the article I gave you too. It's everywhere. We make sure you have it. The key, right? What's the key? What's the determining factor in this potting soil? The compost. Lousy compost, lousy potting soil. Great compost, great potting soil. All these other ingredients, they're pretty much inert. Well, peat's got some cation exchange capacity, you know. Perlite, you know, is drainage capacity and stuff like that, but no nutrients. Nutrient holding, but not nutrients, you know.
And 2 cups of worm castings or biochar.
Good biochar. Biochar that has been... Biochar, if you use straight charcoal, it'll actually inhibit. It'll suck nutrients up.
Okay.
You want charcoal that has been loaded with nutrients and then had life added to it.
But you can collect your charcoal in a bucket and pee on it. I think
That is the permaculture technique.
that will load it with nutrients and fill up all the sites. So it's
Yeah, this is the unsavory secret of all of us permaculture crazy activists. There's a book called Liquid Gold. And actually I had a bakery class person get me to talk about it on the radio. I said, I won't bring it up, but if you ask me, I'll speak to it, you know. Basically, urine leaves the body sterile unless you have salmonella. If you're concerned that you don't know if you have salmonella, if you let it sit for 6 months, the salmonella will not survive. It will stink to high heaven when you use it. But within moments of being mixed in with the life, you won't smell it anymore. It is incredibly balanced fertilizer. If you pee on your charcoal and then put that charcoal in a good compost pile, you will make spectacular biochar. Leon from Earthhaven has been experimenting with it, and I hear these like you think they're urban myths, but I get enough confirmation to know it's true. He's getting broccoli heads that are 14 inches, 16 inches. I mean, he's getting incredible results. You know? So, do I recommend making charcoal? Actually, I don't. I say wait till we get the capital-intensive systems up to make the charcoal and capture the energy. If we make the charcoal, capture the energy is carbon negative, the charcoal is carbon negative. When you put it in the ground, because life builds on it, it's dynamically carbon negative. Folks, it is the answer. According to James Lovelock, the author of the Gaia Theory, it is the answer to what he saw before that is the inevitability of ecological disaster because of the tipping balances of global warming. In 2007, he gave an interview in, he's this genius scientist that came up with the Gaia Theory, which is that the whole Earth is one organism. And in 2007, he basically was incredibly bitter and angry. He said something like the color of green is the color of mold and corruption. It's all about money. There isn't any green. It's too late. Look at billions dead, surviving populations at the polar regions by the end of the century. In 2010 or 2009, John called me up one night and said, Pat, Lovelock just said, if we get enough charcoal on the ground, we can turn it around. I didn't sleep that night. Because I already thought that. That's why I've been pushing John so hard to do the charcoal thing. John was already into getting life in the soil. I was like, John, you got to get life with charcoal. Right? Because I'd read about all this. You know, it's another whole talk. But when I heard that, I couldn't sleep. And one of the times in that night, because that day before, John and I had been talking about cost effectiveness, how he could get recompense for all the effort he put into what he'd done. And I said, John, we have to do it. And we got to try and get your recompense. But the reality is, you got a daughter. If need be, your recompense is your daughter's future. You know, it's that dynamic. And we're putting in a plant. We're actually going to be able to generate energy, and the plant is going to make charcoal 500 pounds at a time. For each hour, it'll burn almost a cord of wood each time we fire it. It's going to fire it in a pyrolysis thing where the smoke is going to be, the gases, the volatiles from that wood are going to be what we burn basically. 500,000 BTUs of energy per hour. I mean, right away we'll be able to heat greenhouses, dry food, sterilize mushroom media. Eventually we can use the technology to turn that heat into cooling. Down the road, we will get there. It's out there. We just need the time to develop it. Right? We have the skills. I know that we can work with people who have the skills. There are engines that can turn that energy into electricity.
2 cups per 5-gallon bucket of this stuff.
Biochar, yep. That's
So
1
the-
cup. That's 1 cup.
So we have 5 buckets of stuff in here now.
Yeah, so we
right?
need 10 cups. Yeah. That's char grow, right? That's not
That's
biochar.
char grow, yeah,
That's
char grow.
charcoal with John's proprietary mix of foods and microbes in it. Okay?
Basically, he's vegan.
No, he's doing it different, and I can't tell you how he's doing it. But I can tell you that the way we talked about will work. You know, this is if you don't like pea and you don't have time, you buy this. It's very cost effective. It's pricey, but compared to the results, it's not pricey. You know, and we can put you in touch with John. He has some. We're going to be making it here. We're going to be making the charcoal here and making it here. It's one of our projects. You know, and it's one of a few. It's very concentrated because right now the charcoal wasn't easily available to them. We'll eventually develop products that have way more charcoal that take more time to kick in. Yes.
So you weren't talking about a cup like a measuring cup.
No, that actually I measured it the other day.
That's
Yeah.
2-cup cup, right?
No, this is actually right here. This line right here is 1 cup. I did 16 tablespoons and measured it out.
Okay.
Because it's scooped like that. We lost our measuring cup, but I have a baker, so I know that there's 16 tablespoons in a cup, and we had a tablespoon measure. So I measured it out and drew a line. He was a little over a cup. Next time, go a little below that.
Oh, I knew all that. I was
right on the
Right on it, man. You're on top of it. We are in sync.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We're a team, man. Telepathic. You work long enough, boy, you don't have to talk, right?
You said 2 cups, and then 2 cups later, and he's putting in 5.
We're putting in 10.
Oh, but this is not bio.
This is
right.
This is
Sorry.
not 1 5-gallon. No, this is the product I was talking about.
Okay.
This is char grow. That was the recipe I was giving you.
Okay.
And we had
But this-
5 gallons of material put in here, 5 buckets of material.
So we have the equivalent of 5 gallons of potting soil.
Okay.
So we need to do it by 5.
buckets of
Yeah.
potting soil.
That's for
All
one.
right. I got you.
Yeah.
We're
Thank
putting
you.
10 cups of this stuff in here.
Yeah, that's for if you buy potting soil. And indeed, I tell you, McEnroe is the best. There are other potting soils out there. I can't name them because we're online. You know, we're going to be online. You know, but there are organic potting soils out there that are so bad I can't believe it. They are absolutely terrible if you compare them to McEnroe, or if you compare them to their terrible potting soil amended with John's Char Grow product. We actually did a test, which I got John a whole lot of customers from. I won't mention the name of the potting soil, but we were actually at a conference near where they had their corporate office. And we knew their potting soil was terrible, and a friend, Jim Smith, said, Pat, John, you got to get them to put this in their potting soil because it's terrible, and we want to buy it. It's right here. So John said, Pat, do a test. And I grew tomatoes, right? I grew tomatoes in September, which I hate to do. But John only wants to test Mountain Fresh tomatoes because that's what his research is all with. So I grew Mountain Fresh tomatoes. I started them at the end of September. The conference was in early November, right? I didn't heat the greenhouse. It's one of those stupid solar greenhouses that when the sun gets lower, they don't get much sun. Those tomatoes were like, you talk nature and nurture, they were just thrown into a rack. You know, they were thrown into a rack. They were thrown into Fallujah. You know, it was absolutely horrible for those plants. And they suffered horribly. The ones with the potting soil that was unamended, the organic potting soil was unamended, they were this tall by the time I went to the conference and discolored. The ones that had the char grow, they were still kind of lanky and twisted together because of a lack of light, but I would have planted them out. They had nice thick stems. They weren't pencil thick, but they were thick enough that if the timing was right, I would have stuck them in the ground and expected them to work.